Professor Wei Kan is an associate professor of the Institute of Curriculum and Teaching, the Vice Dean of Faculty of Education from Beijing Normal University. He had been working as a history teacher in a high school in Beijing before he obtained his PhD degree in Manchester University, UK in 2007. His main research interests lie in the comparative curriculum and teaching series and practice, sociology of knowledge, and classroom sociology. He has published more than 30 papers in Chinese educational journals, translated two books of Professor Thomas Popkowitz into Chinese, and the 11th volume of Professor Popkowitz's works. His recent study on constructivism teaching in China, transformation in the Chinese high school system, and advancing basic education in China, case study on a primary school in Beijing are impressed by Springer. So let's welcome Professor Wei Kan to introduce his wonderful research with us.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Although I have to say morning in Beijing. Thanks so much for Tom's invitation and Yukun's introducing. It is my great honor. I'm so privileged to present my recent studies here. Actually, it is the first time for us to communicate with each other through Zoom in the background of the pandemic. Let me say something about the rationale I presented this presentation. As an insider, I started to observe the knowledge production nearly 10 years ago after I graduated from UK, which are different academic environments with Chinese universities. Meanwhile, as an outsider, that means I have no any mentoring relationship in Faculty of Education in Beijing Normal University. A little complex, I will explain later. I'm trying to, in this presentation, I'm trying to highlight the cultural logic of knowledge production, which I call it, I employ Tom's conception of alchemy. Thank you, Tom, again, because still I could remember that in the midnight 8 years ago, I picked Tom from an international airport in Beijing to BNU, but I lost my way. It was so embarrassed, and I apologized to Tom in the next morning, and he took out a cap. He took a cap and told me there is a magic GPS in this cap. Actually, it is it has a GPS, but it has academic GPS. And in the following years, since 2012, I was deeply influenced by Tom's theories, conceptions, and his works. I translated his 2 books and a series of works, and so including today, I also want to use some his conceptions, ideas in my recent study. Let me I will start my presentation start from the paper, which published 4 years ago in 2016. Rob Tierney and I compared with the two parallel and representative educational journals, American Educational Research Journal, we call it as AERJ, and Educational Research Journal. In Chinese, we call it as JYYJ. Yeah. I think Tom also knows it, and he's the top one academic journal in educational community in China. And the Tom's paper was published, I think, 1 year ago. I translate them into Chinese. Some Chinese scholars played a joke with Tom and told him he could be promoted to a professor due to the publication on this journal. In this paper, our overriding question was what are the scholarly trajectories, especially related to internationalization over the past decade? What is the nature of the interplay between the local and the global forces? Tierney and myself attempt to scrutinize the tendency of the knowledge production in research community in two countries, China and US. Even educational research journal in Chinese has semi-official supports. One of the findings based on our focusing on areas of study, citations, and methodologies in this comparative study, we revealed that Chinese scholars were more and more involved in the academic publishing in global. There are very strong forces that are shaping the nature of the internationalization of scholarship in China. If you look at this area of the study for Chinese educational research journal, so from 2003 to 2013, a number of separate citation of this journal and the methodology. We analyze these different kind of the characteristics of the methodology in this journal. We compared with more than 190 articles. We have to say that according to recent related studies on international publication of Chinese researchers in the field of education, there's dramatic growing trend of international publication in mainland China. As we can see in this figure, since the beginning of the 21st century, the number of Chinese education research published in SSCI, which means social science citation index, is increasing, with the exception of the small decrease between 2002 and 2006. There has been a slight decrease in number of the some cases since 2007, but the upward trend stabilized after 2012. Published in SSCI in 2018. The total volume of the education research in China is nearly 5 times what it was in 2000. So in total, educational researchers in in mainland China contributed for 23% of the global publications by Chinese educational researchers. Of course, including those Chinese Americans. Researchers come from Hong Kong and Taiwan. The percentage of the local publication in mainland China in the global repository fluctuated considerable until 2016, with average value of only 22%, which is different from the base value at the beginning of the century. So the reason I put the figure here is after we published the paper in the AERJ, they're very obvious increasing in international publication. If we just look at this data, I think everyone will be very impressed. The above data shows that Chinese educational research has attracted more international attention. And the total amount of the international publication has continued to increase from the 2018 to 2020. In the past two years, the participation of the local scholars in international publication of Chinese education research has been increasing. It was become an important force in promoting Chinese education research to the international academic community. Typically, I mean, in the SSCI system, one of the important things I emphasize here is that the power of the state. We know that the new leader of the country outlined his vision to make China the global leader in the political, economic, military, and environment issues over the past 8 years. And now you could see in this figure the research and developed performing countries, and we could see the funds invested in the field as dramatic increasing. So comprehensive data from the National Science Foundation also reveals that China is already well on its way to becoming a superpower in the key area of science and innovation. Science and innovation become the very key terminology in all universities. China's spending on R&D grew by an average of 18% between 2010 and 2015, more than 4 times faster than US spending. If we look at the this system, I called it as it's a huge reward system, SSCI. It's very interesting because I talked with system to scholars in US or in the European countries, in UK. They feel very strange because SSCI just one systems, one academic systems they know. But in China, it is a significant evaluation system to all the researchers, teachers in universities. If you look at this journal, the name of these journals, of course, most of them are peer-reviewed, international, very famous educational research journal. And also in China, we also have this kind of similar counterpart publication system. We call it as a CSSCI, which means Chinese Social Science Citation Index. And only 35 magazine journals in Chinese could be called as CSSCI in educational research community. And the teachers, if your work could be counted as a research works, that means your paper should be published within this system, in SSCI system or in CSSCI system. If your paper published in Japanese, published in Russian, published in French, that means no, your work, your article is out of this system. That means you waste time on your work, on your academic research. Meanwhile, if you publish in Chinese, out of the CSSI system, or the same thing. Just like Foucault said in his article, page, I think here, yeah, Truth and Power, the title, Foucault, Power, Knowledge, Selective Interview, and other papers. On page 131, what he said, in each society, there are regime of truths and general politicals, which are discourse could be accepted by people. And they are the mechanics and ways to distinguish between right and wrong. It is a skill that confirm values and truths. It is power given to decide what is truth. It's very interesting because it's become the regime of the truth. What is your academic works? Your academic works are only published on SSCI system or CSSI system. And very interesting, inside this system, there are hierarchical structure. That means on the top should be the nature, science, of course, to educational research. That is the top one. Research works. Even we don't know that what kind of articles could be published in Nature or Science. If we just educational research, there are some recorded as different area in the SSA system because there are Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. I call it a hierarchical structure because the rewards to different kind of the publications are so different. The Nature and Science, the rewards of the cash nearly $10,000 per paper. Also the Q1 and Q2 or Q3, Q4, each of them, we have different kind of the rewards standard. So I call it as cognitive exclusion means. And it's very interesting because it is kind of this very strong indications among Chinese universities. It is become the trend of the, I call it as mimicking strategies and structure. All the universities, colleges, we just following this kind of the standard, academic standard publications, mimetic normative isomorphism in all the universities. Over the past 10 years, this system expanding the professional managerial class. In China, we call it as the number 985 and the 211. I think Jingying and other Chinese students could understand what that means in Chinese university system. Of course, some of you probably ask this question, how about the quality of these articles? Are they the top researcher in your countries, in China? Yes, we have to say that because these magazines and journals, you know, they are peer review academic journals. They have very strict standard to accept your articles. But still, there are lots of trickies. Say, if you want to publish some paper, there's some ways to get the easy way to publish. You should get Q3 and Q4 journals rather than Q1 and Q2. On one side, you could publish more papers because it's easy to be accepted by these journals. And you could get cash rewards compared with you published in the journal of the Q1 and Q2. Another really interesting thing is, by my understanding, I call it is the new institutionalization of knowledge and creativities of knowledge or innovations of knowledge. If we use Tom's conception, because Tom's work, social identity and professionalization, the construction of 19th century teaching as an element of state building. In this paper, Tom used or Tom gave us very detailed analysis on the knowledge production at the beginning of the 20th century in US. I realized that is a very similar situation. Or I call it as reproduced in the linking macro governance and the governance of the self in the knowledge production in US at the beginning of the 20th century. I don't know my understanding is correct or not correct. I'm just waiting for Tom's comments. They reconstructed the subject or the areas of education because your publications system, there are all kinds of standard on your publication standards. So those areas, those subjects, if you could be publish your articles, papers easily, it seems that you're on the top. Say educational policy studies, comparative educational studies, definitely, if you look at the more than 300 SSCI system, you can see that there are lots of SSCI journals, and lots of these journals could accept your paper. But compared with policy studies, there's a little bit difficulties if you publish your research in the foreign area, say educational, financial, higher education research. Meanwhile, if you are in the field of the curriculum and teaching, there are some challenges. Of course, compared with educational philosophy, educational social policy, maybe not have so attractions by the editors. So, so this system are reshaping the research field and in the universities. And we could say that it's very interesting. I think here I just want to use this kind of the term, call it as institutionalization of knowledge. The power of state, it has very strong influences to knowledge production in universities. As you know, the most of the universities in China, they are the state owned. So you could see that emerged with expert knowledge, the state supports on educational funds, which put emphasis on globalization, nationalism, and ideological features. The rewards is huge. You couldn't neglect them. There's a typical case. Tom's student, one of the Tom's students who works in Hong Kong, and 2 years ago we tried to pursue her to come to BNU. But when she heard about that, the salary of the teachers in the BNU, just $30,000 US per year. She was astonished. And she just gave up the further connections with BNU. I tried to told her the salary of the university's researchers, teachers is a very, of course, it's a very slight, but behind of the salary, there's a huge reward. I think most of the foreigners and researchers couldn't understand how huge as 10 times than your salary. But you have to involve in this system. This system are shaping knowledge production. It has very powerful forces. We could see from this, I just very briefly just explain them to you. And I have some basic conclusions in my studies. I mean, in the process of pursuit of rationalization and social creativities, knowledge production in Chinese universities has been becomes a strategies. Nobody could be escaped from these strategies, these systems. Meanwhile, the directions of knowledge production obviously linking state intervention and integrating useful knowledge, public policies, because state could give a very strong support funds to researchers. You have very little salary, but if you could get the funds from the state, then universities give you another same funds to you, linking last way linking the social administrations and individual self-governance. Another conclusions here is researchers. We believe that aims of the studies should have the feature of the rationale and administration. It's kind of reconstructing the knowledge. I call it as a factual knowledge. I think Tom in his work also used this term knowledge. Finally, I just want to say something about alchemy. Of course, alchemy, in some way, it is a concept of created by Tom, which is means different order and important in the development of Tom's scholarship. Originally, I think this is notion directed to the issue of governing and the system of reason through which models of curriculum design and the learning problems are defined as epistemological problems. Alchemy represents Tom's formulation of how the curriculum transforms disciplinary knowledge into the element of power in the classroom. But here I use it, I understand it as individual self-governments transforms the legitimate knowledge into useful knowledge, public policies, state power, and just put them together into the labor as a Chinese educational studies. So alchemy it was supposedly able to change. Theoretically, I think alchemy means it changed Worsley's mental into gold. It means it is the process of the alchemy becomes analogy in which to think about that transformation that translates the individual self-governance and various discipline knowledge into useful knowledge and the state educational policies. I just want to borrow this concept, this metaphor, as scrutinize the knowledge production in contemporary Chinese universities in these research fields, because if we just focus on the specific phenomena in Chinese knowledge production, you could say that they are reasonable. A state support system on research funds and very strong encouragement on publications in international publications and very strong supports, typically in rewards for teachers, and also behind of the Chinese universities borrow other strategies from US, say publish or perish system. All of them, they are reasonable. They have rationale in global competence in the knowledge production, because China it has a very limited university development history, and it is also the country which has a very large gap with the Western countries in the field of the social science research. But if we put them together, we could understand behind of it, it is very, very strong or very unique characteristics. We may say that it produces the cognitive exclusiveness in the Chinese educational research community, because the hierarchical structure of the publication system, because of the rewards funds system, because of your evaluation system, totally rely on this system. We have to acknowledge that, yes, there's some high quality research results, papers published in this system, but it deeply impacts on the researchers. I think typically to young researchers, in their mind, just like I say this, Tom say that it's a link the macro governance and the micro governance of the self. So my conclusion is that the alchemy of the knowledge production revisions the complexities and the contingencies characteristics of the academic pursuits in China, in Chinese university systems, which is a hierarchical system. The norms of the knowledge production in Chinese universities concern not only knowledge themselves, but also the reclassified knowledge. We are produce reclassified knowledge. All right, that is a very quick presentation on my understanding on my recent studies. So if you have any questions,